Hi chaps, how are we?
Very well. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, very good.
Perfect stuff. I need to start today's podcast with some information, if you don't mind.
Ooh,
you might
public service.
You might remember a couple of episodes ago we were talking about the Fuchs wheel.
Oh yeah.
And we were discussing the relationship between Fuchs and Porsche and where it might be today. I've actually done some digging and got some info from Porsche. The Fuchs wheel is alive and well under the arches of the Porsche 911 as we know it, which is cool. So even if you are speccing a current 992 and you choose the Carrera exclusive design wheels, which if to picture what they look like is similar to the ones on the Speedster with like the Heritage Design Pack, they are genuine Fuchs wheels made by Fuchs, fully forged, etc. So pleasingly, the two companies are still kind of collaborating and doing stuff. And the wheels, they're not just kind of Fuchs inspired; they are genuine Fuchs wheels.
It's a good bit of trivia for today.
Well, I mean, look, that's me. You know, I can sleep at night now. I'm not going to get sued by anybody who's going to say, actually, we are still building wheels for this company. So
that was like one of those tiny little bits of small print that you read in the newspaper that says we reported something totally incorrect.
Yes, exactly.
Please accept this as our apologies.
We bow our heads in shame.
I'll tell you what that'd be good for, Lee, is your Sunday night quiz. That can be a question for this Sunday, I reckon.
Yes, definitely.
Get it in there.
I'm fancying that. Andy, I've seen you were in there once or twice, but you didn't reveal your score. So was it bad or?
Oh, it might. Yeah, I think I only made it to the first week, I'm afraid, and my score was atrocious. Those questions were hard on the first week.
They are.
I'm afraid
now.
I've missed the others.
Yeah, no,
I've made them easier.
They are. They're slightly easier. They get harder as they go because I like to kind of keep it. Even if you consider yourself a connoisseur, definitely join.
So you got the hook.
Yes, exactly. And if you don't know a question, the whole point is you learn stuff, don't you? So I am going to do it every Sunday while we're in lockdown. If you want to join, then join us on Instagram.
Well, I was going to join this weekend, but I got a bit confused on what day it was with the bank holiday, and I turned up on Monday at 6 like a fool. There was nothing going on.
Watch the replay.
Yeah. Definitely.
Joe, have you nicked Andy's lift as well?
Have I? Oh, I haven't nicked his lift. Jack. No, I've just nicked his jack.
Right. I was going to say he's just spent all this money on a lift, and I haven't got it yet. Garage, but okay,
no, just his trolley jack. I don't know. I don't think I've owned a trolley jack for about 3 years, which is pretty embarrassing, really. So anyway, I went and borrowed Andy's, and had a little test fit of those wheels that are going to be hopefully getting on the car shortly. So
any good?
Plan. Fingers crossed. Yeah, the rears look pretty good to go. The front's a little bit tight on clearance. So I think if I get the right tyre choices, then fingers crossed we'll just about get there.
No disasters. They're not sticking out by about 3 inches then.
No. I think it's not. It's not exterior arch that's my issue. It's inside arch.
Oh, that's all right then.
It's going to be the one. So one way or another we'll sort that out. But the car did throw me another little interesting one to sort out. And it basically spat out one of its headlights, which was quite funny. So, all the on the early cars, I don't know if you ever take one apart, but on the back there's all these little pins that kind of. There's about half a dozen or so of these pins that kind of spring load in the back of the headlight that hold it together and hold it in. And if one lets go, they sort of domino all the other ones, and then it just sort of spits
out, don't they?
Yeah,
I've seen too many early 911s with bits of duct tape on the front holding. Somebody's on a road trip somewhere, and the headlights popped out, and they've spent the rest of the week with the duct tape holding it on.
It's never a good look.
That's funny as well. With those front fenders are known by our friends in Germany as the gun barrels. That's what the designers call that area of the car. So the gun barrels are quite literally shooting out headlights by the sounds of it. So
exactly that.
We've got another guest on this week, haven't we? And the guest is a direct result, Andy, of one of your pre-lockdown trips with your 993. Isn't that right?
It is. Yeah, I made the trip up to, I think he's in Atherstone, which is where Centre Gravity I've got their base. So we've got Chris on today, Chris Franklin. He did a big health check on my car suspension. Found it fascinating, and I thought that our listeners would as well. So yeah, I'm going to get Chris on and talk suspension.
We're back on UK soil as well, aren't we?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been spending a bit too much time over in the USA, haven't we?
Indeed.
Even though they have been all mostly expats.
Yeah, randomly. So I reckon let's get Chris on and let's have a chat.
Sounds good. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine and dandy. Sun's going down, long day in the workshop, and I'm as good as I'll ever be. You imagine that feeling, you're coming out of the shed in the afternoon, having done something meaningful with all the smells that go with it, with the sun on the back of your neck. That's how I'm feeling at the moment. So thanks for asking.
Good to be back at work. I believe you've only just been back a few days.
Well, we were given the good to go last Monday. We turned up maybe 3 or 4 days ahead of that to take the workshop out of mothballs.
Yeah.
And make preparations. But you said work. You'll get to know me, but it's like asking a kid, did you enjoy working in what's that posh toy shop in London?
Hamleys.
Hamleys. Did you enjoy working and doing your project in Hamleys? Was I working? So we were open to do holding of spanners and generally having good folk with us last Monday. Yeah. We're going through alcohol-based hand cleaner, sanitizer, geyser, sif, paper towels, even masks and things. So yeah, we've got all the gear, and we're running kind of part capacity. So what we're trying to do is give people the confidence to come up and see us, know that we won't try and cram people in, because typically it's like Alcoholics Anonymous in the customer suite. You've got 2 people coming in the day, 2 people going. There's always a crossover, and we get a second meeting in the customer suite when enthusiasts just get together and.
Yeah, I remember when I came up, there was 3 or 4 of us and having a good old chat. But I guess you have got that advantage. There's just 2. You've got 2 bays. You've got 2 customers in at one time, so you can keep that separation, can't you?
Yeah, and today was lovely because one chap just did not want to go. He wanted to be involved. He wanted the experience.
Excellent.
And the experience is, we bolt these people. I wear Snickers trousers with an umbilical cord, and I plug them onto his belt loop, and we tow him around during the days.
Excellent.
Chris, I have to ask you, what did you do before Centre Gravity? And the reason is, because I'm looking at some notes Andy's made here. This is quote from Andy. I seem to remember something responsible, which, I mean, to me begs the question, well, what's an irresponsible job, Andy, to begin with? Because, I mean, unless you're a coordinator of mass gatherings at the moment, is there something as an irresponsible job? But nevertheless, I would love to know, therefore, what did you do before Centre Gravity, Chris, that was responsible?
Immediately, or life career-wise?
Go for the full shebang. Yeah, it'd be great to hear your full story.
Yeah, life career-wise, I was a weapons systems operator in the Royal Air Force. I was
responsible.
That's entirely responsible. That's so fair play.
So ultimately, if I'd have got the wherewithal and the brain cells and the synapses, I would have been what's called the weapons systems operator. Official Secrets Act was signed, but it's now. But I was streamed as officer air crew for training. I was training as a navigator. So, you know what a navigator does, it gets you the wrong places at the wrong time. For slower aircraft, so your multi-engined aircraft, so your Hercules, your refueling, the Nimrod, and all of those babies. And that was a career up to that point, up to 1991, when I left the Air Force and went back to something that I could do. I'm trained. I went to Polytechnic and did hedge my bets and said, well, if the Air Force doesn't work out, they wanted me to get a degree, any degree. They said, just go and do a degree, go and get yourself some junior management experience, and then come back when you're old and wise, which was 25. And in that time, I'd been a mechanical engineer. I'd done my apprenticeship in motor vehicle maintenance while I was doing my degree.
Oh, so you were on the right kind of track then, doing your degree to what you've ended up at the end.
Chris, putting us back to centre of gravity. So after a bit of an eclectic mix, then how did you wake up one day and start centre of gravity? How did that all come about?
I guess you guys are all familiar with the term burnout. As a project manager in 2001, I had the burnout. It ended up that I contracted glandular fever, big time off sick. TNT didn't want me back until I was stable and right and motivated to come back.
Yeah.
And it was at that point when a psychiatrist, which is one of TNT's psychiatrists, was evaluating my motivation, and we both agreed I wasn't motivated. I wasn't motivated to go back and get toasted again. So she identified those things that motivate me, and those are, and these are the big five. Oh, there's five. Drive every day. That gives me the right sensation. Scare yourself every day. That gives me the right sensation as well. Get the sun on the back of the neck so that the hairs stick up. That's a nice sensation. Be busy doing things that you enjoy. I love fixing things in the shed. Give me a petrol mower. Give me something that's broke. Give me my dad's car. Give me a video record, a VCR. And then if you can do those things every day, then I'll get up and time just hemorrhages. So she said, I want you to think about those things. So you want to drive every day, check. You want to scare yourself every day. Well, you can combine the two. You can fiddle with things and fix things because ultimately you're going to get a pat on the back for fixing it.
Yeah.
And I don't find those things difficult. So she said, those are the guiding principles of how you should live your life. You're not coming back to work. We want you to take another month off and then we'll do a review, another month off, do your review. And ultimately, when we did the review and I went back, I marched into my manager's office. He's the program manager. And I said, Pete Holt. I'm Pete Holt. God bless his cotton socks. I said, Pete, I'm leaving. What? You can't do that. You've only just come back. And I said, I'm leaving. Well, when are you leaving? I said, I don't know, but I'm leaving. And they call it the reticular activating system. This is psychologists. And you need to go and live these things every day, or as best you can. And it was pursuing those things that I started to notice things. And bingo. So I was given a reprieve by TNT. I was given those things that make me happy and want to live to the end of the day and use the time. And that 2 months or so, 3 months, put me in front of the TV just at the right time. It put me at Donington, rubbernecking just at the right time. It was the time that I got my first 911. So it's 2001, 2002. So that's what's 15. Oh, well, that's what's 18 years now.
Yeah.
And out of that came a eureka moment, where I dangerously knew just a little bit more than those people that I was working with, talking with. And we can go into that, the detail, but ultimately it ended up me writing a business case. What's one of them? Let's go into my carpet bag. I've got a tool there that says that's how you write a business case. So I wrote the business case. I did a P&L, and I did a synthetic P&L, and I did a SWOT, and I did a presentation to myself. And ultimately, I asked the bank manager for 50k for capital equipment, and he gave me 18 and told me to sell stuff because it was shared risk.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2003.
Now I've seen pictures of like a trailer with lifts and things, and was that the starter? Was that where the 18k went?
Oh, I'm glad you've seen it, because I'm really proud of that. It's like Thunderbirds 6. So whilst working my migration out of TNT, Peter Holt said, well, if you're going, we'll work on that basis. Thanks for giving me the heads up. Right, let's work it so that when you do leave, you are a consultant project manager.
Yeah.
And whilst we're buying 7 days a week out of here at the moment, we'll ramp that down while you ramp your consultant engineer up.
Yeah.
Bingo. And that trailer was I'd seen it first in 2003 at the it would have been, it had a Ford Escort Mark II on it.
So it already existed. It wasn't something that you invented.
I ain't that smart, but no, the accolade goes to a chap called John Everard, and his sons, JD Garage Equipment. This is weird, but there's another story there. But I saw the initial whilst at the show. I can't remember. It was an auto sports show. Did they exist in 2002, 2003?
I imagine so.
Yeah. And I saw this Ford Escort, and it was lifted by its sills.
Yeah.
And John and his lads, who were into rallying up north, Hull, had developed this thing in their workshop. Their job was a family business, selling and buying and implementing second-hand and new garage equipment.
Yeah.
For the likes of Pendragon and so on. Yeah. So, and I rung them up and said, hey, I've got an idea. I'd seen Jeremy Clarkson and the lads prattling about with that mobile dyno. You must have seen that.
Oh, yeah.
Dave.
Yeah.
A mobile dyno where, you've got 500 brake horsepower rolling over it, and it develops 200 because it's old and smoky. And I thought, if I could turn that, one, I don't need overheads because I'm mobile.
Yeah.
I can get to these 151 make car clubs. I can get to circuit because there's a track day. This is how I sort of present it to bank manager.
Yeah.
There's a track day for every day of the year, and there is how many track day organisers were they? I forget the numbers. And there's 365 days a year. I'm blooming heck. You can have a track day on a Christmas day if you want, or the plum pudding at Mallory on a Boxing Day. So business case was, there's the audience. I need to get to them. So the trailer, I rang him and said, would you want to develop this further so I can lift by wheel as well? And not only do that, I can set it up on any ground and level it and get a race flat. And here's the requirement. I need to be able to get ready from debus to rebus. That's stop, set up, put the tent up and whatever within an hour.
Yeah.
And I need cross wheel accuracy of, by Spark at the time was saying no more than 1 millimeter off level, so from one wheel to the other wheel across the axle or diagonal, no more than 1 mil. And he rubs his hands and he says something like, "Bayek, of course we can, lad." And bosh. So I took delivery of that, and I went to see Bicebart. Phil, his name was, at Bicebart headquarters, Bicebart, you might hear them. Which
is that the alignment gauges?
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bicebart is synonymous with the German motoring industry.
Yeah.
So here says something, 1898 or something like that. Mr. Bicebart and Mr. Daimler were mates. They had the first road registered taxed vehicle, and they shared it. Yeah, so you can see how entrenched Bicebart is with the motor manufacturing industry in Germany. And at the time, I rung them and said, I want to use your label, not Hunter, because it's synonymous with Porsche, and that will get my foot in the door. Credible brands, use credible brands. People then are a bit more at ease, rather than using Twinkle Twinkle Little Star Systems 4-wheel alignment gizmo. String, however, and camber gauges in the right hands are epic. But Twinkle 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 Little Star might not be, because it tells you a whole load of stuff that you don't know about. And it introduces terms like degrees, minutes and seconds that, if you'd rather forget your school degrees, minutes and seconds, if you put 2 degrees of toe in on a car that wants 2 minutes of toe in, you're going to get an angry customer if you can move the car off your drive, because the thing is going to be locked. But so the Bicebart, Seat touring car team were the only other outside agency in the UK using it in the field.
Yeah.
And I said to Phil Hodgkins, I think his name was, who was the managing director of Bicebart, I'm going to be using it in the field, and we're going to set it up. And I demonstrated to John Everard, JD Garage Equipment, and to Phil Hodgkins, I think, how these things work, how it's going to work. And then Jane and I, my wife and I, she's my apprentice, we, for 1.5 years, proved that we could get consistent result. So take a car off, put it on, take it off, put it on, whiz it around. And the fuel for that journey was the S2000 there. And I'm sure I've heard one of you rambling on about an S2000.
Cracking car.
S2K, wow. What a piece of equipment. And I had a chance meeting with somebody who was disgruntled with a local OPC. Yeah. I'm not going to mention his name, but he knows exactly who he is. He'd driven a Boxster, 987 Boxster, back in 2005. So that's kind of the first 987, isn't it? Yep. That's the. And he'd driven it at one of the experience centres. And he'd ordered the car, Sport, 3.2 Sport. And the car that he got delivered wasn't the car that he drove at the experience centre. And he'd taken the OPC to task that it wasn't the same thing. Didn't feel right, wasn't balanced, didn't turn. And this chap was heavily into the S2000. But he'd just jumped ship, like most S2000 owners do, into something similar. And of course, the S2000's always been pitched against the Boxster, hasn't it? And because they both got rag tops, but both of them are purpose-built roadsters. Yeah, not a chop top, not a coupe that's been modified to be a cab. And anyway, this chap went back to the S2 after I'd sorted his issue out. So with his current car, with 1.5 years worth of backstory, he came. We set up the rig, which you've seen a photograph of. You might have seen Michele Alboretto's Footwork Arrows car on it outside Cornbury House. That's one. You might have seen Land Rover.
Yeah, I think that is the picture I saw him seen. Yeah.
Well, there's another one with Krusty, which is our capital purchase. Remember, I said I had to go and buy some of the kit myself.
Yeah.
Krusty, which is a 200 TDI Land Rover with holes on the thing. So you got 2 ton, whatever it is, sitting 6 foot above my head, lifted by lift points, jack points. This thing could lift 3 ton, and it was just amazing. Built out of girders, because that's where they come from.
So how long were you using that for before you became less gypsy-like, I guess, is probably the term to use, isn't it?
Yeah, gypsy's good.
Yeah, how long were you a gypsy for?
We were a gypsy for a year and a half again. So we were running the business model, which was technical, really, and is there demand? And then was it a year and a half? So where's that got us to, lads? About 2005, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2005, along that journey, I'd got closer to Porsche GB through Porsche Club, because I got this Great Northern bloke ring me up one day, and I was sitting in the car park at Borders waiting for my daughters to come out of Borders. They're both bookworms. And the TNT mobile phone went. So this is 2005. And this bloke says, "Here, I want your trailer." I said, "Well, you can't have it." He said, "Well, I don't want your trailer. I want the trailer and you." And it transpired I was talking to Phil Clark, or Captain Phil. And Phil, at the time, along with Barry Smith, was the slant nose register head honcho for Porsche Club. And they were organising the national concourse. And they had this bright-eyed eye, because at the same time that I'd seen the trailer back at the NEC, he'd seen it. And promises were made from JD Engineering to Phil Clark, who runs a specialist Porsche independent up in Wigan. He's more into the more exotic Lolas and your prototype cars and your Le Mans cars, classic prototypes and so on now. And he wanted to use our service he said, "Here's a condition. You come along with it. I'll feed you. You'll wear the uniform. We'll put the sponsor details on one side." And we had these twist, turn, button side skirts. And I gave him the details, and he was able to plug on his sponsor's side skirts. I put my side skirt on. So when we weren't doing the officiating of the concourse, get this, people submitting the car to concourse from the regional championships, going to the national championship and being told, "We ain't just going to get a mirror and look under the car. We're going to take the car up now. You're going to drive on. We're going to drive up the rig. We're going to take it so that the judges can get under the car." And you've seen them turn white. Oh,
yes, I bet they were.
Oh, man. And we enjoyed doing that. And supporting Porsche Club, which was, again, it was a golden ticket to just getting involved in the community. And with always the aspiration to give information freely, because I'm an enthusiast. So I'm the kind of guy that will go to a concourse and I'll open the doors and open the frunk and open the engine room cover, and I'll freak out about getting into the car, where I'm not just about the pure how it looks aesthetics. I want people to live and smell and breathe.
Yeah.
So ideal. And I think you've seen pictures. We got Michele Alboretto's car on there. So people would say, you're not going to get my car on this. Well, if we can get Michele Alboretto's car with 10 mil ride height clearance from the barge boards and the bottom boards onto the trailer on that 7 meter, we'll certainly get you 356 on there. You asked the question, when did you stop using it? We moved into the unit. Phil Clark basically says, stop messing about, Chris. You're doing a brilliant service. You got a good rep. We need you. I can't be bothered to do what you do because I ain't got the patience. Please give up your other job, which is consultant project manager.
Yeah.
And please throw the switch. So I put my heart out to him because he was responsible for the big jump. And the first Jay knew about it was that box of, the cardboard box of bits from your desk.
Yeah.
Was coming through the front door with those. And she said, you haven't, have you? I said, I have. I said, I trust Phil. Trust Phil. And that was 2006 when we moved in the mobile unit. Because it was still used as a mobile unit right the way into 2008 when I bought my next toy and we were using it every day.
Yeah.
And we were doing, obviously, remote events, and we're doing clinics around the UK. Mm-hmm. We got down as far as Poole. We did an S2000 Poole meet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we got the S2000 locals.
Yeah.
And we, I think we did 10 cars in the day. So 10 cars.
Yeah, I know somebody that had an S2000 at that sort of time. I must ask him if he was one of those 10.
Now, the likelihood is that either the S2000 doesn't exist anymore, which is probably the case because he still does. So it's one or the other because the things were, and of course they've gone through from an enthusiast to, the second tier, then third tier, and of course they're going back into enthusiast hands now.
Yeah.
Because we're actually seeing cars that we worked on. We actually worked on maybe 2,000 of the things.
Wow.
2,100, say.
Yeah.
So the car.
There can't be that many more in the country, really, can there?
Ian Heigl-time. We'd have to ask Ian that. Yeah. I don't know, but I've crashed one as well.
So the unit that you're in now, is that the unit that you moved to when you stopped becoming a gypsy?
Yep, that was the academy. Yeah. I called it Academy Workshops because I wanted to offer, along with what I did, the ability to bring the person close, the enthusiast close, because it seemed to work when we were running the operation out in the field. People are interested in how their things put together and how. Go on.
When I came to see you, I don't even remember. It was last year, and we did a health check on my car, which I haven't managed to fix anything yet. But we spent.
You have engine mounts.
I've done the engine mounts. Yeah, that's fair. But we spent the morning, and you took me around everything. Took me along for the ride, made sure I understood what was going on. I'm quite nosy anyway, but I think you probably do that to most of your customers. You want to sort of take them along for the ride so that they fully understand it, not just bring them up with a bill at the end and say, this is what's wrong.
That's right.
To me.
You are not special. You are not special. Your mum probably thinks you're special. But you are special. And you're special because you are the owner of this thing that you're willing to jump in and travel. How far is it from yours to ours? 3-hour drive?
Yeah, I guess it's about 3 hours.
Okay, 3 hours is a good opportunity to stretch your legs for 3 hours. But very special and you're one of me, and it's nice to have friends and enthusiasts there because it makes getting through the day so much easier.
Yeah.
And as I say, if you show, do, and they can go and repeat, and it's the best word of mouth. And it also tries to show our transparency as well. So a guiding principle of the business, guiding principles. Anybody work for a company that's got a mission statement? It's normally A4, or maybe it's A4 double-sided, but our mission statement is, don't tell lies, otherwise your dad will kick your backside. Yeah, that's, yeah. The other one is, enjoy your day, treat the car as your own, and when people ask for information, give them what they ask for and give them more, if there's enough time in the day, because you talk too much, Chris. That bond with the customer, if, for example, the cup of tea, how you doing? I appreciate you're on tenterhooks here. Get ready for being relaxed. People ring and say, I'm going to be late. I said, enjoy it. Just be late. It's not a problem because the job will get done. And I just love the bond. We're getting spoiled at the moment, I would say, because customers, we've got one can stay, the other one must leave. You take the loan car or drop and run.
Yeah.
And we're not getting that lovely time. So we have to then make sure we do it on the phone beforehand and make sure we do it afterwards with the debrief, because we do, like my old times in the Air Force, we do tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, and make sure some of it goes in, because they're going to be your disciple. So there you go. It's an unusual process, and that's why we called it Academy Workshops, because you might give somebody the enthusiasm and the wherewithal to demystify it and just go and have a play themselves, pick up a spanner, and that's part of the wonderment of having a machine so wonderful as the Porsche in this case.
What made you pick where you are? Because I know you took us out for a little test route around about the local roads, and I wondered if that test route was actually what drove you towards where you picked the unit to be, because it's got some quite good roads. And take us through your test route and what you learn about the car, I guess.
Okay, so I was working. This you're going to roll your eyes now, and this is going to be a long one again. So anecdotally, I'm working out of my head office at T&G Logistic over in Atherstone. Atherstone.
Not far away then.
No. So Atherstone is the middle of the country, and that's why all of the lead logistics providers and Daventry place themselves there. So, for example, Aldi, TNT, FedEx, and there's a lot of warehousing and distribution. Yep. So I couldn't cope with desk dining. So during lunch, 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever, I'd pick my sandwich up and I'd munch while I walk, and it was either canal or it was a green lane or something, just to get some fresh air, come away from the madness. And I needed some engineering doing for the Moby lift. Mm-hmm. And I knew that there was a Precision Engineers on the industrial estate immediately behind Holly Lane.
Okay.
And because I knew that he was a precision engineer, because I could see turnings and shavings and whatever in a bin. And occasionally there was like gems in there. You know, you look in and I'd walk past and you could smell the coolant, the cutting coolant off the lathe. Yeah. You could smell that, and it was in the walls. The place was saturated with stuff.
Yeah.
And I knocked on it. I said, "Can I come in with a sandwich in one hand?" And I said, "Here, mate, I've got some engineering. It's a bit brutal, but I need it. I need this turning, an internal radius opening up for these 4 things." No, it was 8 things, and they were in fact, they were what does depleted uranium? That's what they felt like, depleted uranium shells that held the marquee down over the trailer, the race flat.
Yeah.
And I needed the radius turning so I could internal, so I could put the bracket in. And it got to the point where this was one of my favourites. So it was either Green Lane or it was the canal walk with a butty. You guys know what a butty is?
We do.
Yeah.
Because I
You're
think
not that
nah. And I ended up pulling up a chair and watching this chap work, because there's no better place than being in a workshop with a tri-axis milling machine, and he's got several lathes and whatever, and he's like calling the music and calling the shots on each of these machines. And it transpires this chap produces parts for ProDrive.
Oh, really?
And he's got you go into Swarovski, don't you? And you've got these, Molten and Brown, or one of those high-end shops with glass cases in and Gucci stuff in on the shelves. Yeah. And he's got shelf on shelf of all the finished items that he's supplied ProDrive.
Wow.
And I'm just jaw on the ground, and can I hold that? It's tactile. You guys know what I think there was an upgrade on the 996 gear shift, aluminium pack. So you got the gear lever knob, and you got and the handbrake, and it just feels nice. It feels good. Cold in the winter, but nice. And you got lots of stuff you want to hold, but consider it sold if you break it. And I ended up in there. Synonymous with that, whilst I was still working, the people at either side of where I live, which is a small new housing estate, they were originally supportive of the work I did, and we'd get Lamborghinis, we'd get TVR Griff and Cerbras and Chimeras and Wedges and S2000s, and oh man, some of the things that were coming up and down the road were, and people were just getting brassed. They'd support it. They'd give me service work to keep me going, because this new bit, it'll fizzle out, it'll get brassed off with it and they'll sell his kit. But no, it got busier and busier. Weekends, we did a nice B&B, and we did dinner for the guys. Anyway, both the neighbours got sick, and one of them came to me one day and said, "Chris, we've had enough. We'd far rather you didn't, work on the drive." Well, we respect the laws, which are the moral code, which is don't rev the engine, but you can't stop customers doing that, especially when they're saying bye-bye. Don't use air tools and things like that. No cutting, grinding, or whatever. And ultimately, I went and sat with Dave, precision engineer, and said, "Dave, I've got a problem." He said, "What's up?" I said, "I've been told that I can't work on my drive." And he said, "Well, that's made the decision for you, hasn't it?" I said, "I'm going to need somewhere to work, but how the hell do we go about that?" And he stopped what he was doing. His XYZ tri-axis machine was still running, and it had finished its processes. He got me by the hand, and he walked me 100 yards to the front of our current unit and said, "This place has been empty for 2 years.
Perfect.
And he said, I'll give you the telephone number of the landlord." And bingo bongo, that was 2000, and so it was February 2006.
And there you are.
Yeah, and it's perfect. It's the middle of the country, and the test drive.
Yeah, tell us about the test drive, because that was quite interesting to me, because the route that we took had the right cambers here, the right cambers there. You could tell that this was doing this and this was doing that, and they just intrigued me the way that you went round the test route and learned so much about the car, not learning about the car on the jack stands in the
diagnostic. That's right.
Waggling the wheels and stuff like that. It was more about a on the road test drive
dynamics
to work out exactly what's going on.
Okay, if I could take it from summary level, we'd get so many people don't literally come to us routinely as a service wheel alignment. They typically come loaded with a problem. And in the very early days, I'd go through the pre-brief, which was, okay, how does the car feel to you? And some people had got the language to be able to sort of enunciate that, whereas other people didn't.
Yeah.
And they just said, it feels weird, or it doesn't meet my expectation. I've jumped out of a 3 Series and I've jumped into that car. It's the first 911, and it just doesn't feel right, Chris. So, okay, does it do this? Does it do that? And some of the fundamentals, which are steer. So, does the car steer within your expectation? So, you think, you do, the car responds. Does the car counter steer? And you refer to as a pull. Everybody refers to it as a pull. So, there's one constant. I'm going to take Einstein's. I'm going to put Einstein to one side and say that Newton was good enough to say that the gravitational constant is the one that does the pull, and it pulls the car down the slope. So, and that's always the case. Always the case. But believe it or not, we get cars that counter that. And if you could bottle it, you could sell it. And they actually counter the slope and rise over the white lines onto oncoming traffic. So we got these things happening, and I'd go, okay, what bit of road can I? Right, okay then. So I'd ask the question, or I'd get the proposal that the car was rancid and uncontrollable on a bumpy B road.
Yeah.
Well, what speeds? And we'd find that there was a common denominator. It was 60 miles an hour on a car that didn't have a stable front axle or a stable rear axle. We talk about stable axles in a minute. So that's an axle that's like got a force field around it that fights off external forces like a bump. And we'd find the common denominators. So up to 2006, mid 2006, I knew of all the traits because I've been doing it for a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years.
But I guess once you found this test route, you then got a way of determining all of these different factors.
Yeah. So to answer your question, we start with 5 miles an hour outside the unit, which has got pockmarked industrial estate roads with services. It's like the best road that you've got in Tunbridge, as far as you're concerned, where you've got a urban road with all the services being dug up, and Virgin have put their bits in and the water authority put those bits in. But it's like that on the industrial estate. 5 miles an hour, and we look straight, steer straight, and we're looking for something called slip. And the slip is the deviation from where you're pointing the steering wheel, which is dead ahead, to where you end up, and that's defined as we call it the slip. There is another slip, and there's another slip, but it depends on your definition. So, and then we then put the car to the middle of the industrial estate road, still at 5 miles an hour, to assess the forces that are opposing or helping or negating gravity, i.e., the trickle of the car into the gutter. So, if they're abating, if the forces are abating in the front axle, the car going into the gutter, it'll hold its station at 5 miles an hour. If it's really bad, it'll cross the white line and hit the curb on the other side. So you can imagine you're driving with your knee, because we all do that occasionally in traffic, and not having enough power in your knee to hold the steering wheel because the car's driving in the other direction. You'd be amazed. And then
I found it quite interesting. I think I learned more about my car with you driving it for 15 minutes or however long it was than I had sort of taken in before, because I thought it it was quite good. It sort of went round corners pretty well.
Yeah.
But then, we did those tests and going along the dual carriageway and accelerating and decelerating. You could feel the car steering itself without any steering input.
That's the
which
thrust.
was down to, different things in the rear suspension were actually making it steer when you weren't putting any steering input in the front. So
because steering, you've been bang on. So the steering mechanism, you've got two. You've got the front axle and you've got the rear axle.
Yeah.
And 991 or GT3, 991 GT3 or Turbo S with rear steer has exactly that. So it's got counter steer at low speed and with steer at high speed, which in essence makes the thing more stable. And the counter steer on our little roundabout, which is going, it's a high G turn, and see which end starts to lose the grip first. So is it sniffy understeer or is it flicky oversteer?
Yeah.
And it's wet roundabout or a dry roundabout. You've got the dual carriageway where we do the bias checks against steering bias using tools in the road. Left bias, right bias. Look where the puddles are. Wherever the puddles are, that's where the car would like to go if you let go of the steering wheel. Thrust check. What we're doing then is accelerating hard and lifting the load on the front axle, applying it to the rear, so you do a rotation. And then the rear gets more of a say in the steer of the car. And like a forklift truck, if the two wheels are not symmetrical around the butterfly axis, the dotted line, going down the longitudinal axis of the car, if they're not symmetrical, you'll get the rear of the car pushing the nose the opposite way, just like a forklift truck.
And I remember we experienced some of that in my car, which we managed to dial out. Which was good.
So, go on.
No, go on.
And then there's the bumpy B road. And the bumpy B road is the test there, 60 miles an hour, and see whether the car can breathe with the road.
Yeah.
So magic carpet ride, independent suspension, one of the best suspensions on the planet. 80% of cars on the planet don't have independent suspension. So we're coveted really with and so the bumpy B road is, does it scare the bejesus out of me at 60 miles an hour? Because the comment from the customer would be, my wife's Fiesta can do 70 and I can be doing 3 other things and it just does it. Whereas the 911, in this case, is making a song and a dance literally.
So that when you're going down that sort of bumpy B road, and I think this comes back from memory from what you said, is that really the car should soak up all the bumps and the undulations. The suspension should be doing its thing, and you should almost be able to just, if it was a straight road with those bumps down it, you should be able to point straight and it just soaks it all up, rather than trying to pull you in and out from this side of the road to that side of the road as it goes down the road.
Yeah.
If it's doing that, then there's something wrong with the geometry setup.
Yeah. Or there's something wrong with the car setup. So the car setup, the chassis, in this case, we can change its height, and or we can change the geometry.
Yeah.
And the geometry is, well, what's this geometry, Chris? You've got tracking. It's like my dad used to call it. And then you've got your 4-wheel alignment.
Yeah.
And then you've got, so the advent of the Mondeo, for example, wonderful car, independent suspension, and then the Ford Fiesta, wow, icing on the cake, independent suspension, adjustable toe. That's a plan view of the wheel or a plan view of your feet, and where you put your 2 toes together, we call that positive toe or toe in, a bit like a duck. And toe out, we call that negative toe. And you can adjust all 4. So the geometry is looking at the attitude of the wheel in toe, how straight up the wheel is, we call it camber. So negative is tilty in at the top.
Yeah.
Positive camber is tilty out at the top, like a old 1930s Bugatti, for example.
Yeah.
And then you've got the caster. And Andy knows that he's got rear caster as well, because the 993 is special.
Take us through the specialness of the 993 rear caster. That's one of the questions that I've got, actually.
I told you were special, Andy.
Yeah.
So the camber makes an impact on the transition down that road. A lot of negative camber on that bumpy B road produces, when it's hit, if you did force vectors when you were at school or poly or uni.
Oh, I don't remember those. I don't know if anybody else does.
Magnitude of forces. If you hit it down its axis, it'll continue along that axis, and there's Newton in there as well. But if you hit it obliquely, it will take an oblique impact path off. So a wheel with negative camber, 3 degrees, for example, if I give it a good thump upwards, it will travel part up and part sideways. So now, depending on the speed of that you take the bump, it might be a grid folding of the tarmac. But when that wheel hits, it will not only move up, but it'll move sideways, which is why the front of the car potentially can do a Bambi, which is skip sideways. And there's nothing you can do about it other than hope you don't skip onto the grass. And to tell you about the special 993.
Yeah, the kinematic toe. That's what everybody refers to, isn't it? What's the deal? Lay it out.
Sounds rude, doesn't it? It sounds rude, but
lay it out in layman's terms if you can, Chris.
All right then. When you put the wheel through its motion, and remember it's got a degree of freedom up and down, so you push it, it moves, and typically it moves up into the arch.
Yeah.
And when you let go, it comes out of the arch.
Mm-hmm.
As that's happening, the designers have given, that's the chassis designers, have given complementary camber gain or negative camber gain and toe programs. And it's referred to as a camber or toe curve. And the idea is, under all of the situations that you're going to put that wheel, whether it's on throttle, off throttle, in roll, in turn, or on braking, in turn, then you get a complementary camber and toe, depending on the amount of roll that you've got, or squat that you've got, or lift off you've got. That will save your bacon and make you look like a star.
Okay.
993, they wanted to make the car, this is the Porsche designers, they wanted to make the car fun to drive, safe at high speeds, and if I dare say, flatter the driver. So you've got an independent suspension, which is independent suspension typically can be double wishbone, which is the top of, that's what most high-end prestige sport manufacturers use. But multi-link is one step, which is basically taking a double wishbone and adding more programmability. And the whole objective is to manage that contact patch and how that contact patch is presented to the ground.
Okay.
So, kinematic toe. There's two things involved. Kinematics is the study of motion and what happens during that motion, and it's the motion of the wheel in this instance. Mm-hmm. And the toe is the toe insetting that we mentioned. And so in roll, for example, and you get a roll and you get a lateral force. What's a lateral force? Lateral force is produced by the front axle when the Coke tin and the Embassy Regal slip down as you're in the turn, and you lighter down the dash, and they go out the window, or they end up in the door pocket across the cab. So lateral force and acceleration. So the acceleration with kinematic toe, which is a soft bush placed in conjunction with a hard bush on the toe arm, when the wheel gets pushed sideways, it toes in. And it's basically the Weissach effect. that was coined in the 928 rear axle design.
Mm-hmm.
And the Weizsäcker effect there was using elastokinematics, which is, to you and me, rubber. Yeah. You push it, you prod it, it moves. And the way that the 993 implements that is by having, if you like, if you put your two fingers in front of you, offset them and push them together so they miss each other, like red arrows crossing in front of you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And imagine that you're pushing a butterfly valve in the choke of the inlet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they'll cause a rotation. And if you've got one soft bush and one hard bush, you can cause a force moment and therefore a change in the toe of the wheel.
Okay, so what I'm taking from that is that you're making sure that the tyre is at the right angle to the road by having this.
Yeah, we
is
talked
that right?
about.
Yeah.
That's right. So, you heard me talk about a stable axle and an unstable axle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll give you an indication. If I got an unstable axle front and an unstable axle rear, I turn in. I don't have to turn in because it wants to turn itself because it's unstable. So it doesn't care what forces are coming at it, let alone the forces I'm trying to apply through the steering wheel. And the unstable axle at the rear says, "Oh, so you want me to go sideways, do you?" And off she goes. Now, in a controlled environment like rear wheel steer, just the right amount of toe, not neutral, but toe out, negative toe. If you want to kill James Bond, you don't cut his brake lines. You just give him toe out on the rear axle. Yeah. And then he goes into his first corner and the thing just oversteers like an oversteery thing. Whereas you've got a stable axle, the stable axle uses the grip at the contact patch, which has been enhanced by towing in, scrunching the rubber into. It's like putting an elephant above the wheel, so you get more. That's the contact patch. The more load you can put on it, the more lateral force you can put through it because the
more
grip
dig it's got.
Bingo. That means that I can, with my unstable front axle, toe out, and a stable rear axle, toe in. I can harness the thrust. Yeah. I've got more grip. I can harness the braking, the retardation. I can also, within the budget of traction, I can put some turn through it and I can give it thrust as well.
Yeah.
And it'll just keep on holding and holding and holding. So long as I don't lift off. And there's the other thing. So the kinematic toe on the 993 axle, if you lift off, which is, I'm a driver, I've had enough, I've lifted off, on an early 911, nose dives in hard, which is a lovely sensation, but it will catch some people out.
Yeah.
And on the 993, they kind of muted that with the lift off because you get a force moment on the rear wheel, which will toe in and give you a stable axle, allowing you to complete the maneuver without making a fool of yourself.
Okay, so
give you a brown trouser moment. But
yeah, I've had some of those. But with the 993 special, we say, has any of that kinematic toe stuff been taken on into the future, into the 996, 997?
Absolutely,
or is it was so it's still there.
Oh, it's still there, but they've Porsche have removed the form factor between the 996 and 993 is the same. It's a multi-link suspension, light, stable and agile LSA. So the 996 and the 997 and the derivative on the 991 are all multi-link. It's just that the links, the control arms, the links, all managing the same degrees of freedom.
Yeah.
But they're all still rubber bushed. And there is a less of a delta between the hardness of the rubber on the toe arm and on the end of the it's the lower wishbone on 993. So it's the backmost bush. The foremost is a ball joint.
Okay.
So yes, they've carried it through, but what they did was, if you can imagine, you've never seen a 993 before, you've got 3 adjustments to make. You've got camber adjustment, you've got kinematic toe adjustment, and you've got toe adjustment.
Yeah.
And on the 996, you've just got the camber and the toe. So if somebody's not played with the 993 before, and they know that there's camber and toe adjustment, there's a temptation, and I dare say that some people have used the kinematic toe adjuster because adjusting the upper link arm length changes both the kinematic toe, which is the another name for it, by the way, guys. If you take a literal translation of the workshop manual for a 993 and look at the rear axle, and there's some pictures out there of all the links, and it calls the link that we call the kinematic toe link, literal German, the caster link. So So you can see adjusting the caster on the rear, which is why I said Andy was special, because you've got caster adjustment on the front axle as well. Well, you did up to the 993, and then it was taken away, except for the GT cars on the 996 and 997. To answer your question, 996, evolution of 993, simplified, take away the ambiguity.
So it's taken away the kinematic adjustment on the 996. It still works like it, but there's no adjustment to allow somebody to screw it up. Still there,
you just can't screw it up, which is why we're really hot on bushings. Yeah. So when we take a Porsche original equipment part, like the dog bone, do you guys know what the dog bone is? Yeah. Sibs knows what it is because he's paid for some recently. The upper link arms. There are different qualities of those. So an OE1 has, if you measure the rubber hardness using a shore gauge, it'll probably come out 65 units of rubber hardness at 20 degrees C. Whereas some others I've tested, and you look at the lateral deflection and the axial deflection and so on that bush holds, and you'll find that it's equivalent of maybe 35 units of rubber hardness. It's not fit for purpose. And therefore, the kinematics that have been evolved and developed into the 996 rear axle are being, you basically redesigned them. So. Yeah. So that what happens when you lift off, what happens if you change your mind partway in turn and load or unload, what happens in the roll to the camber gain and the toe change. Well, you've just rewritten the program.
I'll tell you what, Chris, I was going to ask, obviously you've gone forward in time. If you wind the clock back in time, if you go back to obviously Porsche specific sort of 60s and 70s setups, is there still much you can do with those, or are they kind of set out the box?
Wow, that's a leading question. Wow, I didn't prime you with that one. The 60s cars through to 89 are God's gift to a chassis tuner. So I have, because it's trailing arm, semi-trailing arm axle on the rear of those cars. I've got camber adjustment and toe adjustment. I've got ride height adjustment out of the box. You don't get that with 996. You don't get that with the 993.
I did quite well designing it at the beginning, didn't they? Really?
Oh my!
That led from the sort of race cars as opposed to obviously moving down the times. It's more road car setup focus and costings. Do you think the early cars were more because it came from their sort of race car pedigree? Is that why they had all the extra adjustments there?
Absolutely.
Sorry, Chris. I just want to bring it kind of up to today. Yeah. Really, so modern. We'll stick with 911s. PASM, advent of technologies here. I'm talking about PASM, active suspension management, rear axle steering. What's the other one? Dynamic chassis control. When a chassis setup with all of those technologies on board goes awry, does do those technologies make it easier or harder for you in terms of problem finding and then problem rectification?
Yes, it is made more difficult, and we find we probably want to edit this one out, but we go back to basic engineering principles. Anecdotally, here you go, 997 turbo. Chap says it feels strange. The PASM, and we go through the pre-brief on the phone, and he says, "Yeah, PASM's working. I hit the button. I get standard chassis and I get sports chassis." He says, "But the bumpy B road is rank. The turn-in is rank. It understeers like a boat." So we took it to the roundabout, and I do a 20 mile an hour turn-in, and just to see whether the front tyres will latch, knowing that I've got an escape route. I turned in this turbo, turned 20 mile an hour turn in, and the car carried on. I didn't have to make a decision to turn and get my escape route off the roundabout. The thing just piled into the next exit. I drove it straight back to the workshop, and the dynamic, I thought, well, I'll use my Mark 1 eyeball and let's see what the factor of camber, front and rear, because that's a tuning aid for understeer and oversteer. The factor of toes using Mark 1 eyeball, which can be trusted, and I couldn't see anything. Okay, have a look. Dampers leaking, so there's another means of changing all the roll bars are connected. Yeah, okay. Right then, something happening outside of my gaze. Disconnect PASM. So I disconnected one of the umbilical cords, which sends basically amps and volts, 1.5 amps to the damper, which changes the valve. Disconnected it. That then throws an error, and PASM says I'm not playing. I say thank you, and we go drive again. Turned in 20 miles an hour. Bingo. We got a stiff car because PASM, he said, like a striker, like a union man. I'm out, everybody's out. So if one damper's not working, PASM says I'm not playing. I'm not listening to the yaw sensors, the accelerometers, throttle, what else? Throttle, brake. And it says, you're driving by the seat of your pants. There's no help. And it goes stiff. And the Bilstein dampers, unlike the Ferrari dampers, when their fail-safe mode is full stiff. So bingo, we get a sports car and the car behaves. So now I'm on it. I'm all over it. And the PASM, and we found that if I could substitute a damper in, then pressing the switch would operate PASM. It told me it operated. You wouldn't be able to discern that. And PASM, all PASM and the CAN bus and the error recording on the PASM cars, all it needs to know is there a resistance at the end of this wire? And it sends what we call a fire and forget command. It says, there's 1.5 amps, and do with it what you're supposed to do. I don't need to know that you're doing it, just do it. And if you've got a faulty damper with a seized valve solenoid, yeah, it's taking 1.5 amps. It's not measuring a change in resistance. And as far as I'm concerned, it's doing the job. And there's no feedback. So the feedback loop. And so that's the way. So we just go to engineering principles. So if we disconnect PDCC and switch it off, I can code the car not to have PASM. So for those cars, GT3 997.1 GT3s, for example, when we move them over to Öhlins because of the requirement, that's the car's mode of use. PASM is given short shrift. We code out PASM, and we can code out most of the ancillaries. So to answer your question, it makes the job interesting.
Interesting. Well, off the back of that, then, what's not necessarily like your favourite model to work on per se, but if somebody comes in or and they say, right, this is the Porsche I've got, and in your head you just think, absolutely lovely. I know probably before I even look at the car what the problem is likely to be, rather than it being an absolute minefield.
Okay, I'll answer that because I get great pleasure in all of them. And remember, at the end of the day, my job, the way I get through my day is getting a pat on the back by solving the problem. If there is a problem, for which mainly they are, because that's why they've given me a call in the first place. It's not routine.
Yeah.
So hard and think, I would say
we're all rooted for particular ones, you know that, don't you?
Yeah, I would say a 993.
Hey. Winner.
Why? Because the 993 has many cloaks and daggers that'll get you in different scenarios. Whereas the 986, 987, and the 986, and all the cars before are seat of the pants feel, and it's a feel that is real. So if you're feeling it, it is real. It is happening. So when customer says, I'm feeling this, I say, well, you need to believe that. And if I'm what's that word? If I follow methodical and follow my process, I will wean this out. With a 993, it's you've got 3 or 4 things all saying me. but the thing is that within the scope of the session, I can cover them all. The electronics just adds another layer of investigation and inspection, and is a nice. But so the 993, I rub my hands because I know I can look like a hero at the end of the day, and he's sweated and he's given me a car, and wow, and I get a big pat on the back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what we've realised in this episode is that in terms of suspension, we are only just scratching the surface, Chris, of your knowledge and expertise. So we really appreciate you giving some time today to go through, like I say, top level on that. I think Andy and Joe will agree with me in saying it'd be great to get you on again some point in the future. I know you've been kind enough to answer a few of our reader questions directly to them on our Instagram page. We're really grateful of that, so thank you. But yes, we'd say to our listeners, if anybody still has questions, that we'll bank them with a view to getting you back on in future, if that's okay.
I absolutely love it. This is a huge event for what I do and the people around me in the team, small family business and so on. Huge event to be involved with the community, which is we're at the heart of the community, and you come to the heart of the family as well when you bring your special toy. And I'd love to. I mean, you've heard the Radio Forge series of, working in a workman's environment. My, you want to, you really need to just come visit. It's a lovely experience.
That'd be awesome too.
Yeah, it makes all right tea as well. The cake's good as well, if I remember rightly.
And biscuits. We always advise that so that you're not disappointed when you visit.
You bring biscuits with you?
You bring your own flavour of biscuit.
Okay, I didn't know about that.
And we've got variations. We know that scope of supply, Tunnocks biscuits and Tunnocks marshmallows at one end of the spectrum.
They're always good. Yeah.
And Marks and Spencers are also at that end of the range, but we'll do the tossed chocolate digestives are good, triple chocolate digestives are good too, and we've got an apprentice trained tea maker, and we always make the first cup of tea or coffee to get you in and comfortable, and then we teach you where the supply is.
Yeah, the supply is. Yeah, I remember that indeed.
Yeah, and where to wash the cups and so on. And
When you're
but the
done.
workshop environment,
that's brilliant.
you're invited. Love to.
We'd love to come up. We really would. And before you go, Chris, we'd like you to enlighten us, please, with your answers to our 10 quickfire questions, if that's okay.
Do I have to just say yes, no,
Yes,
quick fire?
Yeah, exactly that. I think, Andy, you've got the questions at the ready.
Yeah.
One word answers then, not many. Is that
one?
No, yeah, one word.
One word answer.
Right.
No more.
I'll put pauses in then. Go on.
Yeah. So number 1, air or water?
Air.
Your favourite Porsche model?
997 C2 Bogo Standard.
Oh, I thought there was going to be more to that answer. There isn't.
No, you said one word,
yeah.
and that's the best I can do.
Come on, Andy. These are our rules. We can't break our own rules.
Favourite Porsche colour?
Nightmare blue, midnight blue.
Midnight blue. Who is your ultimate Porsche icon?
Easy, Mark Donoghue.
What is your favourite track?
Alton Park.
Do you foosh or do you not foosh?
Always foosh.
Stock or hot rod?
Hot rod.
Narrow or wide body?
Aerodynamics. Narrow. Obviously.
Of course. I think
that's 3, wasn't it? That was good.
Yeah. I think the next question, I think we all know what the answer is going to be. Cars and coffee or track day?
No. I'm going to get hungry either way, aren't I? Track days, because we always have a coffee at a track day and a jar anyway. So track days.
Good. And lastly, should a 911 have a back seat or not?
Yeah.
It should. It should have them fitted. No carpets in the back.
Look, people that are getting in the back, it's at their own risk. If there's a seat, if there's a carpet, if it's just a warm bit of metal, which is mainly in those kind of cars, it's at the risk of the person sitting in it. So yeah, of course, it's somewhere to put your helmet and stuff stuff that you can't get in the front.
Excellent.
Yeah, spot on. Brilliant answers, particularly the Mark Donoghue one. We've not had that one yet as well, so kudos.
Oh, he is my absolute all-time. You must read his book, and you must read his approach to engineering and the work that he did with Porsche in the 60s and the 70s, of course. And his accolade with the International Race of Champions, and working with that car, which is epic, in whichever colour you fancy. I love his approach too, and that's one of my all-time. And if you haven't got the book, come to the workshop. It's on my bookshelf, and you can have a flick through.
Excellent. Sounds good.
Brilliant. Chris from Centre Gravity, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Hairs on the back of my neck, standing up, absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
And good luck with the ongoing podcasts. It's a good mantra. Thank you.
Right, let's get the outro done because I've got a massage with a happy ending waiting for me.
Oh, lucky bastard!
It's going to expire if we don't hurry up.
Wait, shall we just leave it as that and just say, look, brilliant, join us next week. You can't leave a man on a promise hanging.
Right, I'm off.
Yeah. Fascinating. Cheers, Joe. Thank you, mate. Fascinating chat, that, Andy, wasn't it?
It was good. It was really good. Yeah, good to hear it inside of Chris's mind.
Yes, and we'll catch everybody at home next week, where we'll have another hopefully fascinating guest welcomed onto Road to Redline.
Absolutely. See you all soon. Cheers.